Aelhian got off at a station in Chongseong Station. At 4 a.m., the surroundings were completely under control due to the D4 class gate that occurred around Chongseong Station. Of course, the station was controlled, and the road to the company was blocked. It was a big deal. If you're late, you're going to be completely upset. After joining, Aelhian, who had never been late, sighed deeply. At some point in the world, there couldn't be just the right bosses in a company that didn't leave work. There was a man on his stomach, shouting and yelling about the incident without going over anything. It was my fault for not studying properly. It's really boring. He wanted to write for a resignation right now, but it was impossible. No fussing, we have to find a way. Even if it wasn't, the atmosphere wasn't pleasant these days, and if it was late, it was obvious that it would break regardless of the reason. If you take a taxi here, the control will block the car, and you will have to go round. Then, the only way left is to break through. He swiped through the control area. It was something he couldn't normally think of, but it wasn't dangerous either. The monster at the gate that appeared had already taken care of by Awakeners, and Aelhian was waiting for the staff to finish up. Okay, let's go in. Out of the station, Aelhian entered a control area that was poorly blocked by excess tapes. There were no people. The dilapidated roads and buildings that had bifurcated due to the battle created a gloomy atmosphere. But it wasn't scary, because the sun was a sunny day. Aelhian hummed as he walked alone on the quiet street. Wow! Is this a monster body? Several corpses of wild dog monsters that have not yet been removed were placed roughly in the corners of the road. The night team seemed to have completed the primary field treatment, and all the ether in the monster's body had been recovered. If ether, the most important resource, remained, the night team would still be there to keep the field until the last of it is taken. However, an unusual aura caught his foot. Aelhian seemed drawn to something, a corpse in the corner. He came to it and stood in front of the body. He stared blankly for a moment. Then, without hesitation, Aelhian boldly put his hand toward a bright light that laid under the monster's belly. The unpleasant smell and touch nauseated, yet it didn't stop him. A cube-shaped nucleus, emitting bright light, leaked out of his right hand as he retrieved his hand from the gut of the monster. It was surely a mistake. It was not impossible that the squad had in their haste left one of the monster's ether cores intact. Is this an unprocessed ether stone? It's my first time. Aelhian was fascinated and looked at the beautiful form overflowing with light. Even the weakest monster's ether core has passed millions of one. Although he has a tome, he is not without a master, and taking it away, of course, a serious theft. But Aelhian didn't wallow on it, at least not yet. The ether had certainly enchanted him. It became obvious when the words came out of his mouth. Looks delicious. Aelhian looked back, then returned his gaze at the ether on his hand. Hot, what am I talking about? Amazed at what he had said, he stepped back. He was still gazing at the object he had on his hand. Part of him rejected the instruction forming at the back of his head to drop the ether and leave. Meanwhile, the hand holding the ether became more and more energetic, and his hand began to tremble beyond control. Just a bite. Are you okay? Aelhian murmured as if he had laid a mental line. Meanwhile, the strength of the grip was getting stronger. Wow! The cube slowly began to crack, and the ether core shattered. It could never be broken by physical force. The core broke out like a piece of glass. And the bright white light that was in appeared very savory, that Aelhian had to eat it. Whoo! It's delicious. Aelhian retorted and wobbled his tongue in his mouth. The power of predation, which had been hidden in him, has finally been awakened. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Tedidak. Aelhian, who ate the ether, quickly left the field. And, after leaving the control site, he continued to run hurriedly and with caution. He drew in a good breath and then jumped into the company building. You are right. Mi-young said the station is under control, so it seems to be late, but planting a manager is not a joke. When Aelhian entered the office, the female worker noticed and shook. Aelhian, who would normally have his head wrapped around, chuckled, sat down, and pulled out a record. Then he began to organize his desk. Elder. What are you doing? Thanks for that. Don't find me now. How are you? He uttered with a fatal exhilarating voice. When he peeked behind him, writing something hard, he was surprised, his eyes wide open. You won't even win the lottery. I can't even compare it. Aelhian smiled and shouted from the chair. Choi choi. Resign. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Yung Chao. Aelhian put the baggage from the company on the floor. After playing the poker at the company, it seemed like he was going to fly away. I feel like my lifespan has been extended by 10 years under stress. In the meantime, while I was insulting and whispering, I actually practiced one of the many actions I had in my head today. The man suddenly gave up the ridiculous stupidity to claim damages if he quit the company, but it didn't matter. I was also an awakener. Aelhian raised his arms and shouted. I have heard many times that if you are an awakener, you will know instinctively. And now, I understand the words properly. He pointed to the wall of his room and slowly put intangible power into the wall as it was drawn in his head. Suddenly the wall turned into the form he wanted. A square pillar popped out of the wall as his hand moved. Then, when he put his hands on the end of the pillar and pushed it back, the wall surface returned to its original state. He now took this for granted. Aelhian picked up a dumbbell that he bought a long time ago and rarely used. I wasn't going to exercise now. When he grabbed the end of the dumbbell and gave it a pull, it was surprisingly very light, as if it was made of clay. It was an incredible strength, a power beyond humanity. Oh, my God. Aelhian was unable to hide the excitement. He kept moving back and forth and around the place. 3 features of the SSS rank written on the awakening paper that you thought were hopeful advisors. Summon, predation, transformation. If it were true, the awakening of tremendous potential was born after the gate was opened. But the ability to summon hasn't been reached yet. Aelhian raised his right hand and stared at it. No one told him the abilities of predation and transformation, but he was able to see instantly all his abilities and how to use them. But it wasn't his first idea. Summon. Even while on his way, he tried many things, drawing several images in his head, but nothing like the word summoning happened. Is it still not enough? It was a sudden situation, but one thing was certain. He ate the energy of the ether and made it with his own power. Then he will have to absorb more ether. But it's impossible to get ether core with the money he has. Although ether is expensive, pure ether cores that came out of monsters and have not yet been processed are prohibited on the market. If the general public wants to obtain it, they have no choice but to obtain it through a trafficking transaction, and the price will increase tremendously. Or can I go into the government or business? The government gate response team, or private awakening company, these were the 2 main paths of the awakening. First, Companies are characterized by hiring a large number of awakened people and negotiating with governments in each country to win the case or territory to be dealt with. The government cannot handle all the gates alone, so many requests come and go, blocking the gates and monsters. Since it is difficult to find and win the number of cases against the government by the power of individuals who are not experts, most of the people who did not join the government response team entered the company. In addition, the awakeners who entered the company were paid according to the quantity and quality of ether obtained from the number of cases they had. In other words, it means that you receive exactly what you work for. Instead of having a basic salary, it is a relatively free atmosphere where you can take a vacation at any time and get back to work. On the other hand, the government gives the hired awakeners the ether's profits from the monster and a substantial amount of the basic salary. It's a lot more money than a company, but there were also disadvantages. As it was to become an awakener belonging to the government, the intensity of work was very high for the safety of the people. They often waited to prepare for an emergency, and when things broke out one after another, they couldn't rest freely. The interesting thing was that it was the opposite of the general image of governments and companies that they often think of. And now, Alhian, thinking about 2 cases, shook his head. No. Either way, you make a lot of money, but you can't get the ether core you need right now. It's useless for nothing. Whether it's government or business, it's the same to get huge profits from ether and hire awakeners with that money. Naturally, without ether, the profits of businesses and governments also disappear. In other words, if you say you hunted, you can't use the ether from there freely. All the ether cores obtained by catching monsters are used or sold to companies and governments that are not awakened, and the appropriate price is converted into money and paid to the awakened. I don't want to talk about my reasoning here and there. If so, you have no choice but to act individually. I've never committed a crime, but it's a big deal. As it is a problem directly related to security and national safety, the gate, which was open numerous times, was naturally managed and controlled by the state. All the awakeners who work as companies or crews work with the permission of the country. Unless in an emergency, it was strictly illegal to enter the field without permission and hunt monsters without permission. Although, in this situation, his finding an ether was strictly by chance. Oh, then I already stole one from the scene. Alhian laughed as she recalled what she had done on the way to the company. He reasoned that the first one was usually the hardest, and then the second one. At this, his heart became lighter. I can't help it. Alhian turned on his cell phone and hurriedly searched for the gate information that appeared in Korea. Even at this moment, there were several open gates. He found one of the gates he needed. E-rank gate. It was the lowest grade gate except for the F rank, which can be easily suppressed with an ether firearm. It's perfect, Alhian retorted. One of the gates was expected to appear in Suwon after 7 hours and was being controlled by the Dane company in combat. He got up from his seat and changed his clothes.